Now will we see the magic?
All right, where's Murray? Okay, who is it?
This is Jesus, kid.
Know then that it is the year 10,191.
Yes, we are bored. We're all bored now.
Hi, good night.
Good night.
Hello, and welcome to Mary vs. the Movies with your host, Mary Jones. Oh my god, what are you doing?
And I'm Dennis Ling.
Yeah. Oh my god. Are you serious?
What?
Uh-huh. Yeah. You know what? I gotta admit, I was not expecting you. Oh no. Uh-huh.
Alright, I gotta do the solo part now.
You know, when I was a teenager,
Yeah.
and hanging out in the basement and teaching myself guitar,
Uh-huh.
I was teaching myself the Ramones and REM and like trying to figure out various replacement songs. And you on the other hand, uh-huh. What if I told you the film that we're going to watch might have absolutely nothing to do with Pink Floyd?
What?
Okay, we are watching something that was requested by the listener. First of all, okay, I'm not, like, should we address the fact that you just played Pink Floyd on our podcast?
Sure.
Look, I was sitting in the office. I had everything set up. I wasn't really paying attention to you. I was like making sure that everything was, ready to go.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden I realized, we've got our headphones on and you had brought a guitar into the room. So we're watching a movie called Wish You Were Here, right? I have no idea if this has any connection whatsoever to the Pink Floyd song. But here's the thing. They did not originate the phrase, Dennis.
What?
No. That's something you write on a postcard.
Yeah, but it's British.
Have you ever sent a postcard?
I guess I have. I think.
Yeah. Did you write Wish You Were Here on it?
No.
Right, exactly. Do you know why?
Because it's a Pink Floyd
Cringe, Dennis. You should be more hunched than you are. All right, so we're watching a listener request. This was suggested to us. I'm trying to think. I think it was listener Todd, but I'm not sure.
Do we know anyone in this movie?
I have no idea what this movie is.
Yeah.
I know it's called Wish You Were Here.
Mm-hmm.
It's from the 1980s. It might be directed by the guy who directed Mona Lisa, which was a movie we liked very much, but
we did.
But I'm not entirely sure that it is, because I have studiously stayed away from looking up anything about this movie.
Mm.
I get the feeling, looking at the poster, that it's a coming-of-age drama about a young woman. I'm all up for coming-of-age dramas. I'm all up for...
Is it in London, do you think?
I have no idea.
Okay.
I don't know. I feel like I saw one image on IMDb where the girl was at the shore, which means she was probably in Brighton or something.
Yeah.
And if this is the guy who made Mona Lisa, that movie also ends in Brighton, which is the only seashore resort in the UK I have ever been to other than Penzance. So I like Brighton. It's kind of like Cape May but dirtier.
Yeah.
It's kind of neat. I had a friend who lived in Brighton back in the early aughts. He went to school at the university. He might be a professor still there, actually. But yeah, so I don't really know anything about this film.
I think it's about a band who their leader went crazy.
No.
He visited the studio.
Absolutely
and
not.
His head was shaved. They didn't recognize
This is
him.
no. This is not.
And they
This
said,
is
"What
not
have you
the.
been doing with
This is
yourself?"
not the Pink Floyd story.
And he said,
Oh my
"I've been
God.
using lunch workshops."
God, you're the worst.
Thank you.
Why don't you just go to a Laser Floyd by yourself?
That sounds fun.
One for Laser Floyd.
One, please.
Yes. That's an old Best Show bit. And yet it really would strike home with you.
All right, so let's just get the questions out of the
All
way,
right.
just as a guess. And I have 4 questions now.
4?
Yeah.
Oh, no. All right.
So,
We've expanded.
Yeah, so there's a love triangle. Yes, no?
Yeah, why not? I mean, young person coming of age, maybe there's some sort of love triangle. Sure.
Is there a death?
Same reason. Why not? Sure.
Okay.
Okay.
Is there a dog?
I'll bet she doesn't own a dog, but I bet there might be a dog in the background. So that's not really a dog. Like, I don't think a dog is a pivotal part of the show.
Okay, there's not a talking dog.
There's not a talking dog.
Oh, we're who knows? Is there an angry dad, and that dad could be God? I like this question. I'm gonna try to keep it going
You're gonna
as long
keep
as I remember.
an angry dad who might actually be a stand-in for God.
Yeah.
Yeah, sure. That's like, isn't that everyone's nightmare?
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
I forget. Was there one in? Well, yeah, there was. There was an angry dad, and and Listen to Me.
Yeah, there
an
was.
angry governor dad.
Yeah, he was a senator, but
Senator. Yeah, sorry.
yeah, no, the angry dad who is essentially a stand-in for God. Yeah, why not? Sure.
All right.
Sure. So yeah, other than that, I don't really know anything.
Oh, do you think that Margaret Thatcher somehow comes into play?
An integral part in the dissolution of the social safety net of the United Kingdom.
Yeah.
I mean, she's always lurking in the background. She is a she's always there as a villain, much like cholera and Dracula. Basically, yeah. I mean, look, if you want to find a villain in the 1980s in the UK, it's Margaret Thatcher.
All right.
So,
yeah, I think that's good.
All right, then shall we go watch it?
Yeah.
All right.
I can't believe that wasn't about Pink Floyd's "Wish You Were Here."
I mean, I can believe that, frankly, yes.
You don't want to dig deeper into the twisted psyche of that band?
No?
All right.
Does it go deeper than Laser Floyd?
Well, maybe not.
Yeah.
We will watch The Wall at some point.
Oh, yeah, we will.
I'm sorry.
You've done nothing to make me want to watch The Wall, by the way.
I don't like it.
Because you love Pink Floyd, and you have been like, yeah, we'll have to watch The Wall, but I don't want to watch The Wall.
No, I'd rather watch Song Remains the Same.
Oh, yeah, no, I actually do want to watch The Song Remains the Same. It's a little outside of our, like, kind of era that we focus on in the show.
No, we've
but
kind of spilled over
I
all
know.
over the place.
That's your fault.
1971.
That's your fault.
It's not my fault. You chose.
Look, are we
Scrooge.
talking about Wish You Were Here or not?
Yeah, we're talking about that.
Okay.
And by the way, it's just 1951.
That's
Just
true.
way out of the.
Did not. I had no idea that this was going to be a period piece.
Yeah, Biloxi Beat Blues style.
That's your pull? Biloxi Blues?
I don't know.
Okay. Why not Lost in Yonkers while we're at it?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. So, yeah, this is a period piece. Did not know that it would be. I did not know that this was actually about a real person, although she's fictionalized in this, and that there's actually more than one film about her.
That he wrote.
That
David Leland.
David Leland wrote this and directed it. He also wrote Mona Lisa. He's written a few films, like he wrote a number of films. But he also wrote 2 films about the same woman. What was her name? Cynthia Payne.
Yep.
Who was a notorious madam in the UK, and I guess she got arrested in the early 80s.
I feel like late 70s.
Late 70s. Okay.
Yeah.
And that kind of
But
brought.
she was in the news in the early 80s because she ran for parliament afterwards. She went to jail and then she came out. And...
when people in America do that, it's for much more heinous crimes than being a sex worker. Yeah. I mean, that sounds so wholesome, honest to God. And actually, I genuinely mean that. I mean, look, yeah. I don't know why we make such a big deal about sex work. I really don't. I grew up in a sexually repressive society. It's called Catholicism. And so it's funny watching this, and it's somebody in the 80s writing about the post-war Britain and their hypocrisy about sex and being repressed and all this stuff, and how everybody was having sex without talking about it, and nobody wanted to acknowledge the reality of it. Nobody wanted to acknowledge, abortion and whatnot. And I'm sure in the 1980s that came across as, oh my God, can you believe how ridiculous and uptight we were back in the 1940s and 50s and whatnot? And I'm watching this and I'm just thinking, I grew up this way in the 80s and 90s, actually. And frankly, America's going back into that, which kind of sucks.
Yeah, this is what they want.
Where women are shamed for having any sort of sexual liberation or just consciousness at all. And, it's so interesting.
And men are not.
And men are not, and that's kind of the whole point of the film, is the hypocrisy of what's going on. That the men are okay, this story is about a young woman who is trying to find her footing into adulthood, right? So it's after the war, it's the early 1950s, she's 16 years old or so, and it's not like she's going to school anymore because frankly, it wasn't that big of a deal if you dropped out of high school in the 1950s. You just went and got a job, and that's essentially what she's doing, because it's not like she's going to go on to college, right? She's not middle class exactly. Her father runs a tobacconist, which is like a corner store, like a bodega. And he's also a barber, right? So he has his shop. He's a shopkeeper, essentially. And he wants to set her up as a hairdresser, which she just does not want to do, and she does not have a talent for. It just doesn't interest her at all. But, it's this idea that, she's not going to go on and study at Oxford or anything. She's just going to have a normal life. And he wants her to have a very specific kind of normal life where essentially she follows in his footsteps by going into, doing hair, right? By having a shop.
And she has a sister, but her mother passed away when she was 11.
Yeah. So
and that's had a huge effect on her.
Absolutely. This is right after the war, right? Because there's a couple flashbacks to just after the war when her father came home from being, I guess in the Navy because he's holding a duffel bag. And
she probably just didn't know him.
Right, exactly.
Here's this stranger coming from nowhere, and
yeah, exactly. So if her father's coming home in 45, he's probably been gone for 5-6 years. Yeah, and she's a kid. Her father's not a real person to her.
Right.
You brought up Pink Floyd and The Wall and stuff, and oddly enough, I do think it's relevant insofar as there is a generation of people who were children during the war. Frankly, it screwed them up. I don't think this woman is screwed up. I think she's just in a bad society. I mean, that's also, I think, probably true of, the people I'm thinking of, in that, at one point they haul her in to see a psychiatrist because she is sexually adventurous in a way that, frankly, does not look that weird to me.
She's not necessarily sexually adventurous. She's sexually curious.
Yes.
She's flirting with everyone, but she's actually hasn't really done anything.
I mean, she does during the film.
Yeah.
But, there's nothing unusual about the way she's acting, except that she's in a society that says it's wrong, right? Or that is extremely repressive about this. It's funny, I was thinking about how I think a lot of people were probably deeply affected in ways that were never entirely explored or understood. Basically, what I'm thinking a lot about Tommy, the record Tommy.
Yeah.
And, and this is subsequent film and stage show and all that stuff. But, that's all about how Pete Townsend was traumatized by both the war and the sexual abuse that he suffered as a kid.
Yeah.
I think about how a lot of these rock stars from, the 60s and stuff were also just traumatized in different ways by the war, by the society that kind of produced a war and then didn't know how to deal with it afterwards. And I think this girl is coming up from the same soil. But
especially England, their way of dealing with it is we must be more proper now.
They got through the war. When you say won, I mean, the only country that really won the Second World War was the United States because they weren't bombed. So you look at all the countries that were on the winning side of the war in some capacity, they were just as devastated as the ones who lost, right?
Yeah.
So this young woman, she's living in a seaside town, and it's somewhere in Sussex. It's not Brighton, I guess. It's like a different town, but like there's a lot of little coastal towns. So it's basically like growing up at the Jersey Shore.
Setting wise, it reminded me a lot of Atlantic City, the movie Atlantic City, before it really went down. But
Atlantic City before the casinos came in.
Yeah.
Right. But when it was still like a seaside place, right? Like, there's so much about this that reminds me of you could easily have set the same story at the Jersey Shore.
Yeah.
And instead of it being about the post-war, you could have talked about it as the decline of Atlantic City. You're absolutely right. You could easily have just made this about a girl growing up in Atlantic City in the 80s.
And the thing is, I've known people that grew up at the shore as an inlander. It's
a mainlander.
Yeah, it's like, man, you live at the shore, you get to have pizza whenever you want. It sounds amazing.
That's your takeaway?
You have so much fun for the 2 weeks you're down at the shore. When you actually live down there, it's the most boring thing in the world because there's nowhere to go. You have to drive 2 hours to get to the city in any direction, and
that's true. Like, I think if you grow up at the shore, it's a very different experience, and it's very boring.
Yeah.
And you get the sense from this that she lives in a tourist town, and it's very boring. And the only jobs you have are jobs servicing tourists.
Yeah.
So when she does get jobs, she's doing things like working at the bus terminal, or she's working in a like a restaurant, essentially, like a, what would you call it, like a tea house, but it's not a tea house, but
a terrarium.
Yes. And so, like, that's her future. It's like that or being a hairstylist. And, like, here's the thing. If you like being a hairstylist, then that's a great future. But she doesn't want to be that, you know? She doesn't want to work in a restaurant. She doesn't want to be a waitress. She wants something else. She doesn't know what that is because she's only 16.
I mean, she knows she wants sex.
Frankly, a lot of humans want sex.
Yeah,
I mean,
but I'm just saying, like, and she's at that teenage.
It's a very funny movie, in that kind of dramedy sort of way. She tries dating different boys, and she gets so far with some of them, but not that far. And when one of them is in the movie theater trying to feel her up, she kind of freaks out a little bit, but then tries to make out with him. That struck me as very realistic, actually. This is how people, do react to what's a very strange and confusing time in your life.
Because that's definitely I've definitely seen that where there's. People act like they're sexually active or that kind of thing. And, they just an act, like everybody's just an act when you're a teenager.
You don't know what you're doing.
We're all just fumbling around.
This film is about how this, this hypocrisy of, I don't know. I keep going back to the fact that he made her see a psychiatrist, right? Mm-hmm. Because she was basically pulling up her skirt at the bus depot in front of the drivers. Yeah. Now that sounds terrible, but when you're watching it, you get the sense that there's an element of performance involved in this, right? That what she's doing isn't just, hey guys, who wants to do me? There's a sort of, like I said, there's performance. There is something where she goes to the movies a lot, right? And so she sees actresses on screen who are sex symbols, and there's a certain amount of, she wants to be like that. They bring up Betty Grable more than once, right? And at one point there is a sign
just showing legs and then up.
Yeah, exactly. And so there's sex around her all the time.
It's basically like people are trying to act like it's the early 1900s, late 1800s.
Yeah.
But capitalism is here. The sex is being used to sell things.
Well, that's where I'm going with it. Like, her father sells condoms, right? It's not as if her father is not just not ignorant, but he is facilitating men to buy condoms all the time. She knows all about this. Like, she doesn't entirely understand how condoms work. And there's a very funny scene where the first time she has sex with a guy, and he's like, "Well, I have a condom on," and he's trying to explain to her, like, kind of like how this works, and she's just like, "Oh, my father sells these. Oh, is that what this is for?"
Yeah, he spent hours in the bathroom putting it on. And I can only wonder how that worked.
I know. It's just kind of like, oh, buddy, that's something you got to do quick, man.
Yeah. People don't really explain how it works before you actually do it the first time. So,
that's the thing. I was watching this, and I like how it gets into the certain level of ignorance people have about sex when you live in a world where you don't have real sex education. I worry that you and I probably grew up in an era which was sort of a golden age of sex education. And part of that was the AIDS crisis, at least for me. I don't know. That's the thing. I don't know what it was like when you were young, but at least because we have an 8-year, age gap. And, when I was right at the age where they have sex education, AIDS was everywhere. And so they would get really specific about like, this is how everything works. And this is how you have to protect yourself. And this is what a condom is. And, I don't remember us actually doing anything like, famously there were stories about like, oh, they have bananas and they're having kids put condoms on bananas. I don't remember like that happening in class, but like they explained what these things were, and so like I knew what a condom was and I knew like how all, different types of, birth control worked and different types of like, barriers to sexually transmitted diseases worked, and this was in the public schools. And my mother's a very devout Catholic, but she was also a nurse. So, what's more important is being realistic about what your kids might do and keeping them from dying or getting pregnant, right?
For me, it wasn't until I was in high school.
Okay.
Like early on, that was early 80s.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think as AIDS kind of got bigger, it became more of a deal the later I got into high school.
Sure.
And it was like, wait, we're having sex. In fact, I don't think I had a sex ed class until like 10th or 11th grade.
Oh, gosh. I think I was in junior high. Yeah. I went to Catholic high school and we did not have sex ed. It was just like, don't do it.
I learned about sex on the paper route.
Wait a minute. What?
I was like,
hold on. Okay. So first of all, you had a
I
paper
had a paper route. Yes.
Yes.
I got
Because
bit by a dog.
you are the all-American boy.
Yeah.
But you learned about sex on the paper route.
I think I took over the paper route from this kid down the street, Todd, and and he asked me if I knew about the birds and the bees. I'm like, yeah, I know, because he could just say,
Uh-huh.
And then obviously I didn't, and so like the two of us like went around the paper route, and during the paper route he explained
How sex works?
Yeah, that was my
Really?
Yeah.
I mean, was he accurate?
Fairly, yeah.
Really?
He was pretty good. Yeah, I learned more from him than anybody else.
But watching this, just realizing like nobody had sex ed in those days. You would pick things up, I'm sure. The fact that she didn't know what a condom was exactly surprises me. If you're 16 in 2025 and you don't know what a condom is, oh, God help you.
Yeah.
You're in trouble. And I mean, like we said, I worry we're going back into that type of a world. Not to go off on a tangent, but like, do you know what the Comstock Act is?
Yeah.
Yeah, basically in a response to the American Civil War. And here's the thing. Wars create sexual liberation, right? That's a known thing. Because, frankly, you might die, right? Either as a soldier or as a civilian. And so it's kind of like, what am I waiting for?
I think people just get very practical around the war.
Exactly,
Yeah.
right.
It's like, oh, I guess we should think about this like normal people.
Yeah. And so, when there is a war, people have sex and sometimes you get pregnant or you want to find out how not to get pregnant. And I wonder to what extent, you brought up that, it's now after the war and everybody's just like, well, we can't act like that anymore.
We gotta rein in these hellions.
But the problem is you can't. Right? I mean, every time you have something like the Comstock Act, which came in after the American Civil War, and it was sort of like, because, people were sending out, basically how not to get pregnant, and here's how birth control works, and I mean, at the time they only had like a barrier method, condoms and whatnot, but, it was at least something. And people freaked out about this. And so, basically it meant that people could open your mail and see if you were sending out, how to have sex. And it was a way to like stop, distributing pornography. And it was just used as a cudgel, like so many things. And, to what extent was Britain probably doing the same thing in like 1950? Yeah, I don't know if it was specifically the Comstock Act. Like, I mean, obviously it wasn't because it was a different country. But like that idea, if it was like 10 years earlier, instead of 1951, it was 1941, and, she was 16 and she was getting laid, I don't think people would have thought it was that weird.
Yeah.
Because there's a war on and there's bombs falling out of the sky. You might as well do it because what else do you have to live for? And now all of a sudden, because there's peace, well, you gotta like kind of rein it in, girl, because we all have to be proper again and pretend, as you said, that it's 1900 and Queen Victoria is on the throne and we should all be drinking tea. And she's saying that's dumb. So the film is mostly like kind of an exploration of both like her relationship with her father and the hypocrisy involved. And I don't think he's not a cruel man, but he's definitely a guy.
He's out of his depth.
He's out of his depth, right? Because his wife had passed away, and since then she's sort of been adrift. And he's also just a man of his time. This is a guy he went off to war, and came home and decided like I get to have like a nice normal family because this is my reward for going off and fighting. And he doesn't get what he wanted, right? His wife is dead. One daughter is obsessed with being a Girl Guide and I guess joining the army. The older daughter, the focus of the film is a free spirit.
I'm always interested in like when you see characters that remind you of other characters or something. I feel like it's kind of like Hollywood defining a type or something. Sure. And I feel like Lydia reminds me of Violet Blick from It's a Wonderful Life.
For those who haven't seen it, who is Violet Blick?
Yeah, she kind of represents like the promises of sex and I don't know.
No, well, I mean, you're not entirely wrong, but I mean, she is one of the two girls in town that he is friendly with. Mm-hmm. And well, though what I like about It's a Wonderful Life is I don't think it ever comes off as actually slut shaming Violet.
No.
Like she's a fun time, and I don't think the movie ever wants you to dislike her. You just kind of go, well, that's just Violet. And which is interesting because that's a movie actually made in the same time period as this film is set, right? Even Hollywood in the 40s, you could have that character be there somewhere. The morality that the people in this film are trying to cling to was already gone. Right. And not everybody even adhered to it in the way that they expect you to, And so she's not an aberration, Linda. Right. The main character. She's not. I think you're right comparing her to Violet Blick in that, this is somebody who just enjoys sex and enjoys, the idea of it.
Yeah, there's a line with so Mary Hatch and Violet Blick. Of course, there's the love triangle there with George. But Violet says she likes George, and then Mary says you like lots of boys, and she's like what? And Violet's like, what's wrong with that? Yeah. and
it's just played as a cute line.
Yeah, but I feel like that Lydia would that's kind of how she views things.
That she would totally understand that character.
Yeah, filling out her dance card.
Here's this girl and she's, able to have sex with these men. Like nobody says anything about the men, right? And I mean, that's kind of what the film is saying. Like when she points out the hypocrisy of what is happening, everybody turns against her. So she has like a couple of different boyfriends and they don't work out. And she eventually ends up in a relationship with the town bookie, who is a friend of her father's. And I mean, this is totally a grooming situation, obviously. I mean, he is an absolute creep.
Yeah.
Oh, he is a monster to her, but what I like is how they show it. He insinuates himself into her life. Like there's this scene during their relationship where she is so upset and unhappy, and she's kind of living in this apartment with him, and he's trying to have sex with her while she's crying. I don't know. To me, that just feels like kind of the crux of the film. Yeah. I don't know. There was something so horrifying and normal about that scene.
Before that, like at one point she says, "Do you love me?" And he's like, "I don't know, and I don't even love myself." He's like, "I don't love anybody. I don't even love myself." And yeah, it's obvious. But
yeah, it's like, oh, it's a little on the nose, but yeah, exactly. So, frankly, sometimes it's fine to tell and not show. Yeah, or to do both, really. And yeah, so this guy is a total creep. He ends up getting her pregnant. And then part of the film is her deciding, what do I do about this? She initially goes to have a back alley abortion, literally in a back alley, and then realizes she just doesn't have the money for it. And so she kind of goes on knowing that she's pregnant and working her job, and her father tries to call her out, and she ends up having this big scene while at work because her father is there to essentially make her feel bad for being pregnant. And she says, you know what? No, you can't make me feel bad about this. This is ridiculous. And, everybody has sex. This is, you're being a hypocrite. And also, why are you showing up at my job to do this to me? Who do you think you are? And man, this scene really struck me because, again, this is just something people do to each other. Yeah. It's horrible, Like, how dare you show up at my job to make me feel like a piece of dirt like this?
Of course, she gets fired. Yeah. But I do like that the staff and the piano player applaud her.
Oh, I love that. Yeah. And there are a couple of people who are at this tea room and applauding her and just kind of like, yeah, girl, you're right. And so, again, now I couldn't tell who that older woman was who sat down with her later and said,
that was her aunt. I don't know if that's her mother's sister.
I think it's supposed to be her mother's sister. Yeah. Okay. And says, okay, look, do you want to have the abortion or not? Because if you want to have like a nice and comfortable life and a normal life, you got to get rid of this kid. Nobody's going to want you. Either put it up for adoption or abort it.
And I'm pretty sure her thinking with this is like, nobody wants me now.
Yeah.
It's like, what's the difference?
She takes the money and we see her go to the same alley again. But then the next scene is her appearing with her kid and just holding her head high and walking through like
dressed to the nines.
She looks great.
Yeah.
And yeah, exactly. She is just walking through like the village green with a pram and saying, yeah, that's my baby. What do you want to do about it? It's great. It's honestly, I love that ending. And that's the end of the film, is her basically just saying, owning up to like, yeah, I had a kid out of wedlock. I don't care. Mm-hmm. And at the time, incredibly scandalous. Yeah. And yes, you absolutely would not get married to most guys for that. What people would expect of you is put the kid up for adoption. I can only imagine like how hard a life it would be, but I like that for the film, they ended on a triumphant note.
I'm not sure if everybody would see it that way.
How? Really? Go on.
Well, I like say an older person.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know.
Like my mother?
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's where I'm going with this.
Go on. Please go on.
She was like, she didn't get it.
Yeah.
And I will say, especially early in the film, it kind of does a lot of flashbacks. Doesn't really tell you it's doing a flashback. Yeah. And it is hard to keep track of who's who. Mm-hmm. Especially like the boys, I'm like, who, like they all look the same. I know there's a blonde one, there's a brown-haired one, I guess. It is a little hard to follow, like, who is who at first.
Yeah, that's true. I mean, it does do a little bit of jumping back and forth with flashbacks and stuff that it can be a little confusing.
Your mom's reaction immediately reminded me of seeing called Leaving Las Vegas.
Yeah, please tell this story.
I forget if I've told this story before, but I may have. But like, so I went to see Leaving Las Vegas. It was right before it was nominated for Oscars. So I went to see it at a matinee, just to save money, with my girlfriend at the time, and we went to and we were at it was the Merlin. Now it's the Highway in Jenkintown.
Oh yeah, but yeah, we know the Highway.
But so if you go at a matinee, but in awards season, all the old people will be there because they've all been reading about what the Oscar nominees are, and they have to see all of them. And so it was packed with us and old people, and we're watching the whole movie, and and it's just these boozing young people. Nicolas Cage and Elizabeth Shue, is it?
I think it was. Yeah.
And so, like, the whole movie, it's like nobody's reacting or anything. And then at the scene where they're at the hotel and they're like, she's like pouring booze on her boobs and he's drinking it off of her, and then they get tossed out by like the management. Suddenly, someone says, "Good," and just a murmuring of disapproval just erupted around us. like every old person was mad at these young ne'er-do-wells. And by extension, us, in the middle of all of them, like, there's young people here, let's beat them with a cane or something. That's how it felt. And I was like, yikes, what just happened?
Well, why weren't you at work?
Well, yeah, why wasn't I not at work?
Yeah.
I should be earning my bread. Tending the farm.
So that was Wish You Were Here, starring Emily Lloyd, Geoffrey Hutchings. I don't know who else was actually really in this who are like, it's not a lot of people who are well known. Maybe they're better known in England. Like somebody named Barbara Durkin played a Valerie. Tom Bell played Eric. There's not like a lot of well-known people in this film. But it was written and directed by David Leland.
I feel a little bad for the actress. She kind of had mental issues after this.
She was very young.
She was 16 when she did this.
She was the age of her character.
Yeah, and immediately after the film, she moved to America, and her mom, she just moved alone to America. She eventually kind of got more known for stuff she was supposed to be in, and then for one reason or another didn't get it. She was considered for Pretty Woman, but she was contracted for Mermaids, but then she got fired from Mermaids, and she didn't get along with co-stars like Peter Falk, and it just sounds like it was a rough going for her.
I'd be curious to watch the other film about this woman. I forget what the other film made about her is, except I just know that it was directed by Terry Jones, Terry Jones from Monty Python.
So how does this relate to Mona Lisa, do you think? Do you think that this guy is, he's just kind of examining the lives of sex workers? And
Oh, that's a good question. I don't know enough of this guy's filmography. Maybe this is just something that he likes to explore, and why not, All right, you can follow us on social media. We're Mary vs. Movies on your major platforms, except for Tumblr, where it's Mary versus the Movies, and I got to figure out how to update that. But we have a TikTok. We're on Instagram. We're on Blue Sky. We're on Mastodon. We're on Facebook even. I know, like, who wants to be on Facebook these days? Nobody, but we are. So let's see. We are on all of your major platforms. You can rate and review the show. We are on Apple Podcasts where you can rate and review us. It would be nice if you did. We're on Spotify. We're on YouTube. We are on Overcast. If you want, you can always just get our RSS feed and plug it into whatever your podcatcher of choice is. We have a newsletter that we try to put out with each episode. We don't always succeed because, life gets away from you. But we do have a newsletter where we talk about the movie that we just watched, talk about other things that we're watching. Dennis sometimes reviews pizza or draws comics. The comics are great. There's all kinds of stuff in there. So if you want to sign up for our newsletter, you can write to us. It's maryvsmovies@gmail.com. You can also write to us with any comments, questions, complaints, or suggestions. We would love to hear from you. We have a Discord, and you can get that Discord address from the newsletter because it's a web address, and it's got like numbers and letters in it. I can't remember what it is. So if you really want to know what it is, check it out on using the newsletter. Or just DM me on Blue Sky because that's probably the easiest way. So just ask me on there. But I will tell you, I am the moderator, and if you are a jerk, I am absolutely going to kick you off of there. What else? We have a Patreon where you can help support the show. For $3 a month, you can help pay for things like renting movies, or like our Zoom account, or our tolls for going to states to have guests on. The show costs money is what I'm saying. So it costs money to do this show. We don't have ads. We're not a network. We don't bring money in through doing the show. The only way we have any money from this show is by you supporting us. So we're like public radio that way, except that we didn't sell our souls to the Koch brothers or Cargill or any of those guys. Maybe we should have. I don't know. But look, and I am a public television subscriber. I mean, I give them money, but I also know what I'm doing. They're also have their own terribleness. But anyway, we are not terrible. So patreon.com/MaryVSMovies. And do not use the Patreon app because Apple will charge you on top of whatever you subscribe to. Just use the browser. But if you do support the show, if you do pay us $3 a month, you get access to a whole second show, Hollywood Avalon, where we watch Arthurian movies. And so that's basically just anything that has something to do with King Arthur in some sort of way. And that can be anything from The movie Excalibur, which we did back in December and which was great, and which is like kind of the ultimate King Arthur movie, or like Knight Riders, the George Romero film, which is basically King Arthur, Ren Fair, bikers in Pennsylvania, which that sounds stupid, but it is such a great film. It's a brilliant movie about what is the meaning of art and being creative. We watch Bugs Bunny cartoons. Yes, Hollywood Avalon. Sign up for the Patreon and you get access to that show. Okay, so by the time you hear this, all right, this is coming out on the 20th. On the 23rd, which is of February 2025, that's a Sunday, and Dennis and I will be at the gallery in Philadelphia, Space 1026, where we are part of an exhibition of the Joe Dante experimental film, The Movie Orgy, which is truly an amazing film. It's like 5 hours long. It was his student project at the University of the Arts he went to? Yeah.
Yeah, it may have been called Philadelphia College of Art at the time.
But yeah, it's the same, it was...
PCA and then UA. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. So yeah, Joe Dante, who of course made Gremlins and Gremlins 2 and The Burbs, which actually we're going to be doing in Dennis versus the Movies month. He made Inner Space, which actually we're going to do at some point. He made Matinee, one of our previous episodes. He worked on Rock and Roll High School, again, another movie we've covered. So he went to school in Philadelphia. He did this 5-hour experimental film, which was like his final project, and it is amazing. It is really fantastic. What it is he took like a bunch of old B movies and commercials and bits of TV shows, and he spliced them all together, and it's kind of like a cross between like watching like MST3K and like flipping channels like on a snow day, and I don't know, there's just something like kind of wonderful about it.
Yeah, it's not like a movie you have to just pay attention to. Like, it's not like, I don't know, like
you're not watching it for
Solaris
plot
or something.
No,
Yeah.
no, yeah, it's definitely not like Solaris.
Yeah, it's not boring. It's actually it's just fun and funny and weird and yeah.
Exactly. And it's 5 hours and it's amazing. And I'm going to be talking before it, and I'm just going to be talking about Joe Dante and B movies and like why I love it.
Yeah.
So
and the thing is, like, you probably don't even have to like sit for 5 hours. I guess you could walk out and come back, and it's
going to be yeah, exactly. You're not going to be sitting there like glued to the screen for 5 hours.
It's like Metal Machine music. It's all the same.
Yeah.
You could skip to side 3. It sounds exactly like side 1.
Well,
but at the same time, so we watched it 2 years ago or something.
2 or 3 years ago we watched it,
and they recommended you don't have to sit through it, but there is kind of a value in sitting through the whole thing.
Oh, there is.
Yeah.
And like it has like an ebb and flow to it that's worth kind of sitting through.
Mm-hmm.
I do think you get something out of staying for the whole film, but at the very least, I think you should come out to this. It's going to be a lot of fun. You'll get to meet us.
Yeah.
If you care about that and you've not done that before. So yeah, look up Space 1026. It's a gallery in Philadelphia. So yeah, come to it. If you hear this before then, please do. Otherwise, yeah, keep an eye out on Space 1026 gallery. They do a lot of different things, and sometimes they do films, and sometimes they have exhibitions. They are not even a whole block south of the Met Theater in Philly. They're like maybe on the same block, actually.
They used to be on Arch Street for years. They've been around for a while, and they're still going.
True.
So it's kind of cool.
So, yeah, next week will be Chopping Mall. And, yeah, other than that, until next time.
I like Willies.